Mindich-Gate is the scandal that changed everything. For over 15 months, detectives from the National Anti-Corruption Bureau monitored the participants, organizers, and co-organizers of, without exaggeration, the largest corruption scheme in our country. And as law enforcement officers themselves say, it concerns not only the energy sector, but also the defense industry. Although so far we have only listened to and watched the first episode, which directly involved Energoatom. While Ukrainians are sitting without electricity for 6, 8, 10, even 12 hours, participants in the corruption scheme and their associates are laundering money through back offices, transferring it abroad, carrying it in bags, and complaining that carrying 1.6 million is quite difficult. Hello, my name is Anastasiia Husarieva. Now I'll tell you all the details about Mindich-Gate and what kind of reaction it sparked around the world. And finally, what this will mean for our accession to the European Union and the support of our partners. But before we start, I'd like to ask you to like this video, leave a comment, or share it on social media. And if you're watching us without subscribing, then be sure to subscribe to this channel. Well, let's get started. So one of the largest corruption scandals in recent years has erupted in Ukraine, the so-called Mindich-Gate, which didn't just involve some minor schemes, but struck at the very heart of the country's energy security, Energoatom. And this isn't a story about individual bribe takers or about isolated people. This is a story about a system that operated for years, siphoning tens of millions of hryvnias from the nuclear energy sector. According to the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, an organized group was operating within the state company, serving businesses that worked with Energoatom. The scheme was simple and brazen. Want to win a contract? Pay up. Won the contract? You still have to pay. Otherwise, your payments will simply be delayed, your documents blocked, or you'll be excluded from future tenders. And it's worth adding here that according to the latest legislative changes adopted during martial law, companies cannot sue the main Energoatom company for payments under their contracts. In other words, if Energoatom doesn't pay a company, that company can't go to court to recover its money. And this is actually important. So the kickback ranged from 10 to 15% of the contract amount. So if you signed a contract for $2 million, be prepared to hand over $200,000 to $300,000. And that's the case with every major procurement. According to investigators, over $100 million passed through this scheme. Just think about that number, $100 million. Just for a second, think about it. This isn't just some ordinary amount. It could be the budget of an entire region, or in some cases, even the budget of a whole province or a very large enterprise. And it's important to understand that this is happening in a country at war. To dismantle this scheme, NABU conducted more than 70 searches. They were carried out in different regions of Ukraine. There are already detainees, and at least 7 individuals have been served with suspicion notices. And this is not the end yet. Detectives are uncovering new episodes because the scheme was multi-layered. There are several key figures in the investigation, but the name that caused the biggest stir was Timur Mindich. For decades, he has been in the business orbit of people from the Kvartal 95 studio. He owns 50% of the shares in Kvartal 95. And this doesn't mean that Zelensky was covering for him, but it's only logical for society to ask, how did it happen that someone from such a close circle to the president ended up at the center of such a corruption pyramid? The most important thing we need to understand is that Mindich left the country on the eve of the searches. And now NABU is preparing international documents to put him on the wanted list because he does not yet have the official status of a suspect. But investigators call him one of the key architects of the schemes. Moreover, when journalists asked whether he is the head of this criminal organization, NABU detectives replied that he is a co-organizer of these schemes. And in the case materials, there are audio recordings of negotiations that took place, as well as accounts and documents. Investigators stated directly the evidence base is sufficient and extensive, and its collection took a long time. This is not a sudden scandal, but the result of months of operational work that law enforcement carried out rather quietly so as not to alert the participants. Special attention is paid to the network of officials within the nuclear company itself. Some managers at Energoatom were aware of the schemes, or at the very least, failed to notice suspicious situations surrounding procurement. The government is now conducting a personnel purge, dismissing advisors, members of supervisory bodies, and anyone involved in procurement procedures. And now, the most interesting fact about this case. An FBI officer is working in Kyiv on rotation, collaborating daily with NABU detectives. The Americans did not come here for nothing. They sit alongside Ukrainian investigators, analyze materials from numerous cases, participate in meetings, and oversee key aspects of major corruption cases with an international dimension. And Mindich-Gate is just one of those cases. The rotation of American representatives takes place regularly, approximately every 4 to 6 months. According to the meeting with the new officer, which took place on November 11th, 2025, was dedicated specifically to the case of Timur Mindich. And his involvement is part of the ongoing coordination between the United States of America and Ukraine within the framework of the Memorandum of Cooperation between NABU and the FBI, which was signed back in 2016 during the establishment of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau and has been extended almost every year since. And the FBI pays special attention to international financial flows. To put it simply, they're focused on money laundering, which for some reason corrupt officials really like to do specifically in US dollars. And it just so happens that this often goes through the United States of America. According to the investigation, part of the funds may have passed specifically through foreign accounts. And without the help of American law enforcement, it will be very difficult to track their movement. And here we need to mention another interesting case. In the United States of America, one of the key witnesses in the Odessa port plant case, Oleksandr Horbunenko, is under FBI protection. You can see him on your screens right now. He is a co-owner of Agrogaz Trading. Earlier, Ukrainska Pravda reported that Oleksandr Horbunenko was detained in the US in connection with the schemes at the Odessa port plant, but was later released. It is likely that he is giving testimony about money laundering and connections with Timur Mindich. Journalists have stated that Horbunenko may be of interest to the federal authorities not only in the context of Mindich, but also regarding other influential users of money laundering schemes. He himself denies any connection with Mindich and calls such assumptions information attacks against him. And now a very serious question arises. Will Ukraine be able to maintain the support of its international partners and allies when the corruption scandal in Energoatom has already damaged the country's reputation? People's deputy from the Servant of the People faction, Serhiy Nahornyuk, who is also a member of the Parliamentary Committee on Energy Issues, directly stated that after the revelations of large-scale kickbacks, private donors began to refuse to provide assistance. According to him, one European partner who was supposed to supply a transformer for the Sumy region refused to invest money in it. Next, I quote the words of Verkhovna Rada deputy Serhiy Nahornyuk as provided by Censor.net. Yesterday, private donors who were supposed to buy a transformer for the Sumy region called me. They read the news and said, you can afford to buy more than one transformer. You know all the names. Reach out to them. And they refused to help, the parliamentarian stated. Well, and this refusal is quite symbolic. Nahornyuk emphasizes that before winter, when electricity becomes critically important, the lack of this assistance could have serious consequences for the energy stability of the entire country. Moreover, the situation has already affected Ukraine's international image. Opponents of the state will definitely use the high-profile corruption revelations for their own political gain. The large-scale corruption scandal involving Timur Mindich and Energoatom quickly spread beyond Ukraine and became a powerful tool of international pressure. Even before the November revelations, Western analysts warned even potential corruption schemes in strategic sectors, especially nuclear energy, could become an argument against unconditional aid. If funds are spent non-transparently, partners begin to question whether it is worth sending new aid packages and under what conditions. Naturally, Hungary was the first to react to this scandal. The country's Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, described the situation as the work of an organized military mafia connected to President Zelensky, suggesting that part of the European funds allegedly does not reach the intended programs. He stated directly that until there is transparency, Hungary will not send its taxpayers' money. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine responded to this. The spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Hrihori Tiki, said that Orban is not the one to teach us because he himself and Hungary are among the most corrupt countries in Europe. This is not a direct quote, but you get the idea. And at the same time, Russia, of course, used the scandal in its own propaganda. The Kremlin portrays Ukraine as a country where corruption is systemic and power belongs to criminal networks. And such a narrative, of course, undermines trust in Kyiv, increases doubts about financial and military aid, and gives additional arguments to Ukraine's opponents on the international stage. For us, this is both a challenge and an opportunity at the same time. If the investigation is effective and systematic, partners' trust will grow, while merely performative actions will only increase skepticism and provide grounds for pressure on Kyiv. And it should also be added here that this corruption scandal could seriously affect the country's prospects for joining the European Union. After the exposure of corruption schemes in strategic sectors, European leaders started talking about a trial period, a kind of test to see whether our country is capable of ensuring transparency and the effective use of finances and political support. Back in the summer of 2025, Mark Champion, senior editor and analyst at Bloomberg on European and geopolitical issues, wrote about the risks to Ukraine's European integration. He emphasized that even potential corruption schemes in state-owned enterprises could undermine Brussels' trust and become an argument against the accelerated accession of our country to the European Union. The president of our country, Volodymyr Zelensky, reacted very sharply to the idea of a trial period from the European Union for us. He considers this a sign of distrust. In his opinion, Ukraine is already demonstrating significant progress in reforms, especially in the fight against corruption. So, a check in this format means that Europe does not believe in the sincerity of our changes. At the same time, he demands that further negotiations on joining the European Union be unblocked, appealing to the strategic importance of Ukraine for the security of all of Europe. He says that what is needed now is not a pause, but an acceleration of integration. Zelensky also emphasizes if the European Union truly wants to see a reformed, stable Ukraine, it must show trust and give a chance. In his view, these are not just diplomatic words. It is a question of whether Ukraine's future will be together with Europe and not just about support from the West, which can be frozen. As soon as a scandal arises,
there are accusations and they must be addressed. The decision to suspend someone from office is prompt, the fastest possible. I formally requested the Prime Minister of Ukraine to obtain official resignation letters from these government ministers regarding the situation.
By these ministers, the President of Ukraine means the Minister of Energy, the Minister of Justice, Herman Halushchenko, who was previously the Minister of Energy, and the current Minister of Energy, Ms. Svitlana Hrinchuk, who has also submitted her resignation letter. Parliament is expected to vote on this soon, and in the meantime, the president has removed Herman Halushchenko and Svitlana Hrinchuk from the National Security and Defense Council, whose names appeared in the NABU recordings. Let's return to Europe. In Brussels, they say the situation is difficult. European Commission reports note progress in reform, but it remains unstable. There are some positive changes, such as strengthening NABU, open tenders, and oversight of state assets, but a full systemic transformation is not yet evident. The trial period for Ukraine is a kind of compromise. Brussels wants to support Kyiv, but at the same time wants to know, anticipate, and control the risks. Some countries like Hungary are showing skepticism. Others, such as Poland and, for example, the Baltic countries, are supportive, but only under conditions of strict oversight. And it should also be noted that when the scandal involving Timur Mindich and Energoatom broke out in Ukraine, many expected a rather serious reaction from the United States. American media and politicians traditionally respond sensitively to major corruption scandals in partner countries. However, this time the situation turned out to be particularly complicated. At the end of 2025, the United States was experiencing its own political turbulence, which, by the way, was also being discussed around the world. The reason was a wave of new investigations related to Donald Trump and his alleged contacts with financier Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein, known for his sexual crimes abroad and, his networks of trafficking minors. He left behind a huge amount of documents, correspondence, and financial records. In 2025, some of these materials resurfaced, revealing potentially opaque financial transactions and Trump's connections with people from the shadowy circles. This literally consumed the attention of the American media, Congress, and the administration, creating a domestic political crisis and distracting from foreign affairs. As a result of this political crisis in the United States, Kyiv gained some time to maneuver. Corruption scandals in Ukraine, although serious, did not become a top priority for attention in the United States of America. This means that the Trump administration could observe the developments, but did not apply immediate diplomatic pressure or financial sanctions against those involved. For Zelensky, this was an opportunity. The internal investigation could proceed, and international support for Ukraine in the war with Russia continued without additional pressure. At the same time, the scandal was not completely ignored by the United States of America. They closely monitored the progress of the investigation, and moreover, they were ready to respond in case of inaction or delays in the process. For American partners, not only the war is important, but also transparency in the use of funds and the fight against corruption. Analysts note an interesting effect. Due to internal crises in the United States, attention to Ukraine from the U.S. side is in fact diluted. The scandal with Mindich became both a lesson for Kyiv and an opportunity to demonstrate that the authorities are capable of fighting corruption independently without losing the support of our key ally. So the key takeaway, Mindich-Gate has created a serious challenge for Ukraine. Widespread corruption must be overcome and those responsible must be punished. Otherwise, we will forever lose the trust of our partners and allies, along with their support and future opportunities for development. We will continue to actively monitor how this situation develops. We are waiting for new tapes from NABU, the serving of suspicions, and ultimately for clarification on who was at the top of this scheme, since according to the detectives, Mindich is only a co-organizer. As soon as we learn new details, I will let you know right away. For now, please like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next broadcast. My name is Anastasiia Husarieva. Take care of yourselves and wash your hands with soap. Bye-bye, everyone.